Okay, guys, so it's been a little while since I've done a normal length video and a mildly normal video. So I know this isn't like the reaction stuff you're used to or the gaming stuff you're used to, but you're gonna have to deal with it because I find this interesting, so I'm gonna read it to you and make you put up with it. Yeah. Okay, so if you guys haven't heard, Wagner launched a mini war in Russia, taking the city of or the taking the most of the Rostov Oblast and taking a decent part of the oblast above Rostov, and we're slowly marching towards Moscow. So, yeah, it's over now if you haven't heard because of Lukashenko. So, now I'll be reading you Russia pulls back from brink of crisis after deal reached to end Wagner incursion. This news report comes to you from the CNN website, so yeah. Saying that so I don't get a copyright claim. And for the 3 point something percent of Russians that watch this, yes, I know it's technically a crime in Russia, and yes, I know that I have at least three felony charges in the Russian government. So yeah, I'm aware of that. Anyway, in the end, the uprising was short-lived, but for a brief and chaotic 36 hours, Russian President Vladimir Putin's grip on power appeared to be under serious threat as thousands of Wagner fighters, led by warlord Yevgeny Prigozhin, closed in on the country's capital, with the private mercenary group claiming to have seized the key military sites in two Russian cities. The Kremlin was forced to deploy heavily armed troops to the streets of Moscow. And Russian residents to stay indoors. You know, technically, since Wagner is pronounced Wagner because in Russia the W makes a V sound, does this technically mean that technically the capital of Russia is in Moscow? Technically it's Moscow? Oh well, I'm gonna keep saying Moscow because nobody says Moscow, even though technically there's a chance that that's what it is. But the face-off never came. On Saturday, the Kremlin said a deal had to be reached to end the incursion, with Prigozhin heading to neighboring Belarus and Wagner fighters turning back from their march. Now is the moment when blood can be shed, Prigozhin warned on Saturday, therefore realizing all the responsibility for the fact that the Russian blood will be shed from one of the sides. We turn our columns around and leave in the opposite direction to the field camps according to the plan. Wagner fighters will face no legal action, and the Kremlin has always respected Wagner's heroic deeds. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. Yeah, Dmitry Peskov. Dmitry Peskov. That's how it's pronounced. Dmitry Peskov. Or Peskov. There is no one Peskov. It's just Peskov. Sorry, off track. You will ask me what will happen to Prigozhin personally? The criminal case will be dropped against him. He himself will go to Belarus, Peskov said, adding that the situation had been resolved without further losses. The abrupt about-face follows a rare, remarkable challenge to the Kremlin that threatened to plunge the country into crisis and destabilize its already stumbling war efforts in Ukraine. The threat of civil war leaves the country and the Putin regime in a very different place Sunday than it had been just 2 days prior. And with Russia possessing the world's largest nuclear arsenal, that instability has other nations on edge, prompting emergency meetings and high-level talks. Threat to Putin. Putin has built a reputation as an autocrat with an iron grip on power since he became president in 2000, with his reign second in length only to Joseph Stalin, the communist leader whose image Putin has tried to rehabilitate. The mysterious death of Putin critics over the years, and more recent critics of the Ukraine war, has only bolstered the Kremlin's veneer of total control and the consequences for those who step out of line. That has now been shaken badly by the Wagner groups, or by the Wagner insurrection. Okay, just for fun, I'm gonna try my best to impersonate like an awful Russian accent and read this the way that a Russian would. With experts warning, Putin may be more exposed than he has been in the latest 23 years. Putin is clearly weakened. By the way, that's the end of the paragraph, so I can read this kind of similar to how a normal person would. Even though I read nothing like a normal person, and I sound nothing like a normal person as I'm speaking this sentence, eh? 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 There's blood in the water, said Evelyn. I'm gonna let you read that last name because, yeah, I'm not saying that because, yeah. Executive Director of the U.S.-based think tank McCain Institute. Or McCain Institute. She added that this near crisis could have been, or could be seen as an opportunity for Putin, critics or rivals within the Kremlin. Some international observers have expressed surprise at what they view as a lackluster Russian response to the rapid incursion, with the lack of rapid, cohesive strategy highlighting the military's weakened capabilities. Putin will also have to contend with shaky public sentiment within Russia. Civilian support for the war in Ukraine remains high, but the cracks had begun to show by early as this year. What? That doesn't make sense, but whatever, going on. With some Russians turning out the propaganda on air and others finding ways to circumvent internet restrictions. Also, they had, tanks running down the streets of Russia, and, a bunch of military vehicles just running down the streets of Moscow. And they were also digging trenches throughout Moscow in some places. So I'm curious, how do they explain this to the Russian people? I'm gonna do my best to explain this in the way that I think the Russian government would explain it. No, the war in Ukraine is just fine. Everything is good. Russia has nothing to fear. By the way, ignore the tanks driving down your road, and ignore the fact that there's 2,000 soldiers just running down the streets frantically with a bunch of rifles that came from World War II and before. And yeah, everything's going good. Nothing is wrong when you see trenches being dug and soldiers running around like crackheads down your street. Everything is fine. Nothing is wrong in Russia. Now pass the vodka. Okay, back on topic now. In months since... Yeah, I know. Low battery, whatever, I don't care, not my problem. Until later on. By the way, this video is going on way too long, I know, and it's quite boring and rather boring, but I don't really care. In the months since the war has arrived on Russian soil, as Ukraine launched its counteroffensive, Russia's Belgorod region saw a cross-border attack by anti-Putin Russian nationals in May, while the Kremlin itself came under alleged drone attacks. The emerged split between Moscow and some of its civilians was on clear display Saturday as Prigozhin and his forces prepared to depart the Russian city of Rostov-on-Don, where they had briefly occupied a key military facility. A video verified and geolocated by CNN show Prigozhin's vehicle stopping as a resident approaches to shake the Wagner boss's hand. Around them, residents cheer. Okay, since I've been holding my breath pretty much for the past 15 minutes, I decided to take a breather. the locals add to the moment's significance. Rostov-on-Don is an important regional capital with logistic and strategic value, housing the headquarters of Russia's Southern Military District. All of this is spilling out into the Russian heartland, said retired U.S. Army Brig Gen. Peter's Walk. I'm sorry, sir. I know you're never seeing this, so I don't really need to apologize to you, but I am sorry, sir. I have to laugh at that name. What kind of name is Peter's Walk? Peter's Walk? Yeah. On Sunday. Beth Sanner, former Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Mission Integration, said the incident could see Putin double down on repression in Russia in a bid to I don't know. That's not what that is. Back control. As Russia has stepped up its, or as well as step up its fighting in Ukraine in the face of international scrutiny. He has been humiliated, Scanner said. He's going to try to reassert his strength. Putin will not just stand there and allow all of those to flourish and blossom. And then I am not going to read the next thing that says World on Edge because it's not that important. It's honestly old news. And if you really want to look it up that much, you can go to the official CNN website at amp.cnn.com. Yeah, here's the state of Moscow right now. Yeah, so that's just all the military vehicles that were just casually driving around Russia. Yesterday, it didn't really show you all the soldiers that were just marching around Moscow. But yeah, that's pretty much all that's been going on recently. But yeah, like it said, Wagner has stopped after President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus said or came to an agreement with them that if they leave Russia alone, they will not face any consequences for their actions. They can stay in Belarus, and that Shoigu and Gerasimov would have to step down. And if you are not aware who Shoigu and Gerasimov is, Sergei Shoigu is the Russian something or another, I forget. Yeah, so if you are not aware, Sergei Shoigu is the Russian Minister of Defense, and the agreement that Lukashenko came up with Prigozhin says that Shoigu will step down and somebody else will replace him as the Minister of Defense. And it also says that Gerasimov, which is the Russian military's chief general, will also have to step down. Anyway, that's all for today, guys. See ya. In the next video, which, I'm gonna be honest, probably won't be for a couple months because, I'm lazy, yeah.